Very good.
Yeah.
It's going to take a second here. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. This is our second live stream of the week where I'm going to feature an amazing story. You guys probably already know him, Kent Carnivore, also known as Lee. Lee, welcome. How did you find the carnivore diet?
I found the carnivore diet out of desperation and patience. A long time just waiting for answers, honestly. I wish I found it sooner because I do strongly believe I would be in a very different position right now. I mean, I'm standing here with a permanent ostomy bag. So I lost my colon in my 20s due to having IBD, so specifically ulcerative colitis, which affects the colon. It's an autoimmune disease. It's also an inflammatory bowel disease. So yeah, I started off having symptoms. So I may as well go back to 2012, really. So that's when I had my first set of symptoms. I had what looked like bloody diarrhea and a couple of very mild spells, which I didn't really take too seriously. But after like the third one during 2012, I thought, okay, I've obviously got a problem here. So went down to my GP and we talked about things. And I was referred to my local hospital just to get a diagnosis. So they performed a sigmoid endoscopy, which is typically a camera up the back end to have a little inspection. They blow up sections of your intestine. They're taking biopsies, and that's how they came back with the diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. And so typically the doctor was saying, eat loads of whole plant foods and lots of fiber. It's a bit of a cliche now, but if you've got any gut problems, that's what you hear is fiber, 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 lots of whole grains. And so that's what I did. I based my diet around whole grains. I was eating little and often, so lots of smaller regular meals and lots of colors. I did have some animal nutrition in the way of lean protein. Well, protein is lean, but chicken, cod, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and again, I'd have some lean sort of ground beef that I'd drain all the fat out of. You'd have a burger every now and again, but it was basically what I would describe as a plant-based diet. And after 2 years, my condition was worse. And so I went back to the doctor. They affirmed that I was doing all the right things with my diet. They started to prescribe me on a typical steroid treatment for ulcerative colitis. And so that's what I went away with. Lifestyle-wise, I was kind of just sticking to lots of small plant-based meals and now the steroids, which actually helped initially. It does lower frequency of bowel movements. And so I would go in and out of what's called a flare-up. When I wasn't flaring up, I'd feel like a normal, regular person with a normal life. But you get these little telltale signs, oh dear, I think it's coming. And then all of a sudden you feel run down, lots of diarrhea, lots of blood, nasty symptoms. And it's like you're out of action as a normal person. So I lost my confidence with work and things like that. And anyway, so I continued on these drugs and they started to not work so well. Basically, a year goes by and it's like I'm not even on the drugs anymore. And it wasn't until 2017 now that I'm continuing to eat the same way, taking the same drugs, but I'm flaring for the last time. And it was so intense. I mean, I had gone to the toilet maybe sort of 20-ish times a day, but in the beginning it was like 7, 8, 9, 10. But this time it was like 30 times a day almost immediately. And it was very, very intense. Yeah. Just relentless, to and from the toilet constantly. By the time I got comfortable, I was just getting signals to go straight back to the toilet. And I ended up in hospital after 2 days of this sort of 30 times a day, very dehydrated. I felt like I was just wasting away and like very, very rapidly. My muscle tissue was atrophying. I was low in iron, low in electrolytes. And they kind of just immediately hooked me up with intravenous strips to rehydrate me. They gave me some different steroids as well to, again, lower inflammation so that they can perform another investigatory camera again at the back end to see how things had changed. And they were really surprised because it had gone from sort of mild and low end to just riddled all the way up the colon. And they were sort of saying there's probably a good chance you're not going to get out without some kind of surgery or removal of at least a large section of your colon. They trialed me on a immune suppressant drug, which they said was about 50-50 that I could potentially get into remission and be on some potent drugs, but it didn't work. They kept me on this drug for a couple of days longer than they should have. And obviously it lowers your immune system, so it's not ideal when you're in a hospital as well. And so they came in and broke the news, we're going to have to take your whole colon out in the morning. And so that's what happened. They gave me my gown and my socks. The next thing I know, I'm sort of laying on my back and coming around after the surgery was done. It all happened so fast. They put you out and you just don't have any memory. It's like you took a long nap and woke up feeling really, really groggy, all the anesthetic in your system and all the drugs. But that kind of wears off quite quickly. They bring you around and they start communicating with you. Spent a few days in the ICU, and then it was sort of finding my own room. And then they were quite eager to trial me on food. And so after about 3 days, they trialed me with non-fibrous food. Can you believe? So
Oh,
they tell you eat loads of fiber, but when you lose your colon, you've got a potential obstruction with the bag now. When they want to try and experiment you on foods, they take all the fiber out. So it's kind of interesting that
hmm.
that's what they should have done in the beginning. The fact that it's indigestible, that's why they don't feed it to you. So they give you lots of bread, lots of toast, butter. Um, Pringles is supposedly a superfood when you have a stoma. Try and work that out. I think that it's starch without the fiber. There's lots of salt as well, so you're kind of getting a stodgy consistency, which is what they like to see. They would never dream of feeding you steak or anything like that. There's even nothing like
Oh,
that even on the
wow.
menu.
Oh my God.
And at the time, I was looking forward to getting back home after a number of days in the hospital, not only to get some sleep,
Mm-hmm.
just get back to eating better food. And I honestly didn't really think too much about it. Can you believe I went back and I ate all the same foods, still believing in the nutrition value of fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I quite quickly developed a bit of a love-hate relationship with food, because now the experience of digesting food, the whole
Mm-hmm.
cycles, it was horrible, and especially with the plants. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of figured out slowly but surely, we would have a Sunday roast over here in the UK. So it's like some chicken and potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, and some vegetables with gravy. And slowly but surely, I was kind of saying, I don't really want any more vegetables. Like, take the broccoli out, take the because it was just causing me so many issues in my bag. I
Mm.
would have some kind of obstructions, minor obstructions, and just didn't enjoy the process. And so I felt guilty about, holding the vegetables and just having the meat and the spuds and things like that. But I was
Yeah.
still eating a lot of plant foods, grains. I'd have a burger and fries, still having a lot of starch and things like that. I still believed in having fruit and juices as well. That's another thing I started to do, a bit of
Okay.
juice here and there. But I wasn't mentally able to cope very well with my situation. I hated the way the bag looked. I
Mm.
didn't like the way it felt. It just follows you everywhere. It affected my work, affected my sleep. And I would go up
Mhm.
and down with sort of bouts of depression, some worse than others. You find yourself in an episode of sort of mild depression sometimes, and then other times it's really, really bad and you just struggle to move forward. And it got to the point where I was like, I seriously need help, because life was actually unacceptable to me. It became unacceptable every single day. Everything that I had to do. I would barely wash. To leave the house was like an achievement. And I knew that I was sort of in a bit of a rut. I was in trouble. And so went down to my GP. We talked. It was a different guy down there, and he was like, "Yep, you're definitely depressed." And basically, we'll book this call via a unit called We Are With You. So it's a mental health care unit. They gave me a call, and we went through a long kind of. It was almost like a questionnaire and some other personal details, but you're sharing like absolutely everything. And I felt quite good for that, because you're getting stuff off your chest. You feel like you're getting the ball rolling, and you're getting seen to. You're being helped. And I think the idea was they were going to prescribe some kind of therapy and probably drugs. Um, but I was waiting a call back from them, because they were going to refine the way they were going to treat you. Where do we go from here, kind of thing. So I'm waiting for this call, and it wasn't until 2 months goes by. So in the first initial periods, I'm sort of not worried about a few days going by, and then weeks go by, and I'm thinking, oh dear, I think I might be on my own here. You couldn't call the numbers back because they were very strange numbers. It was like a one end situation, and I eventually just sat here on the sofa with Lucy, just accepting, like, okay, well, I'm on my own again. I didn't think they were going to get back. And I see Michaela Peterson's anecdote: "Don't eat this on the low carb down under channel." And so I just decided to spontaneously watch that, and it kind of just blew me away on the spot. I expressed to my partner Lucy, I think I might have to try this carnivore diet, because she sounds a little bit like me with all her autoimmune conditions and depression. What have I got to lose? So I just took it as an opportunity to potentially address the issue. And that's what we did. Obviously, as you know, with the algorithm, you get other videos flood in. So I saw the BBBE challenge, right? So
Yes.
that's how I started. So me and Lucy both
Wow.
jumped in overnight. Wouldn't recommend overnight, but BBBE challenge for 30 days. And it's been 2 years and 8 months, and I have not looked back.
As well as Lucy?
No, Lucy's, I would class her as loose keto.
Loose keto. That's
Say loose
still
keto.
very good.
It's
And
pretty good.
Lucy's your wife?
We're engaged. We've been
Oh,
engaged for a while now.
congrats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Well, before I add on Dr. Phil and Richelle onto the screen to ask you more questions, I have one more question
Mhm.
regarding your carnivore journey. So, without a colon, Were there any foods that just didn't work well for you on a carnivore diet? And were there any big mistakes that you would hope people similar to your journey maybe don't make?
Yes. So, I mean, it sounds kind of funny to say, but all plants and fungi are just a
Yeah.
nightmare. But there is definitely a hierarchy. So for me, if you have a stoma, if you have a bag, or if you have a problem with bloating, gas, indigestion, constipation, I would definitely stop eating mushrooms. They're terrible. I mean, I understand that they're different from plants. It's chitin rather than cellulose being the sort of the main substance. It's very
Mm,
robust. It doesn't break down. It's like rubbery, but very
mhm,
gas promoting. And however you finish swallowing any plant, but certainly things like mushrooms, onions, certainly
mhm,
raw plants, cabbage, stuff like that. I mean, however you swallow that food, that's
mhm.
that's how it goes into your colon. It doesn't change whatsoever. So I mean, I've even done experiments with like little bits of plant, like little bits of pineapple, mango, your nuts and seeds and that. However you finish swallowing it, so you can cut a shape out of it and you can
Mhm.
identify it sort of a number of hours later in the bag, unchanged. It's exactly the same. So that was fascinating to me because you're like, wait a minute, how does how does that work? Like, why are the plants not breaking down? It's now going to hit the bag where my colon used to be. And no wonder it was getting so aggravated because you've got all these little sharp bits of nuts and seeds and
Mhm.
all the
Wow.
grains, and the starch is still quite stodgy. But things like mushrooms, onions, apple, the skins, the seed, all of this stuff, tomatoes, it
Mm.
doesn't change. You see evidence of it in the bag, and all the animal products just break down to a fluid, and so they're a breeze to digest. There's no problem. There's very little gas.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, all plants, but mushrooms are really bad as well. Really, raw stuff like that.
Wow.
Um, in terms of problems or mistakes, if I were to go back and change things, I definitely would transition a little slower.
Yeah.
Just again because of all of the cliche and classic symptoms that people complain about: keto flu type symptoms, cramps, leg cramping,
Right.
diarrhea, constipation, energy problems, lethargy, sleep issues. All of this, I believe, very firmly can be avoided by transitioning over about 6 to 8 weeks, because it just gives your biome a chance to kind of very gradually change rather than rapidly change overnight.
Yes.
You think about, you're going to drop your insulin and things like that, and so holding on to electrolytes, that's why people cramp. Also consuming too much dairy, because calcium depletes magnesium, so people, I think, it's tricky, but I would say take it as slow as you're able to take it, because I understand there's different personalities as well, the moderators and the abstainers, and so some people are like, no, if I'm doing it, I'm quitting overnight. And I understand, that's kind of, I was desperate at the time, so that's
Mm.
what I did. But I think that's why I struggled a little bit with energy for the first 2 weeks.
Hmm.
By week 3, I mean, that's when my energy was up, my depression gone, absolutely
Wow.
loved life. It only took 3 weeks, so it was a pretty quick turnaround. But
Wow.
I had little moments here and there where I had a little bit of leg cramping, but I do believe that that all just kind of eventually sorts itself out. But
Mm.
you can avoid these things, and so just a slow transition. I think another thing is not to worry about any specifics, like, am I eating enough fat? Am I eating enough of this? In the beginning, I think just eat what you enjoy. If you are having diarrhea, pull back on fat a little bit, maybe the rendered fat especially.
Yes.
Um, just everything to taste, what you enjoy. And slowly but surely, I do feel like there's a trend in this space that people that didn't even like bloody rare steaks almost eventually get there anyway. It's like we kind of back off the cooking process. We might back off of the supplements, or adding salt, or eating 3 meals a day to having 1 or 2 meals a day. And
Yeah.
so I just think, don't stress about being perfect in the beginning. Time
Mhm.
will tell, as the cliche goes. And it's just about fine tuning your carnivore diet for you, your personal needs, your personal physiology. Because yes, we're all on this spectrum of a proper human diet, but there is nuance.
Yes.
Someone may not have a gallbladder. I didn't have a colon. Someone might
Yes.
be coming from raw vegan, and that's different from coming from a mixed diet that may even be meat centric, but it's very highly processed, lots of oils and plants still in the diet. That's going to be a different situation when you switch from one diet to another. And so
Mm.
take it slow. Don't stress about being perfect. Listen to your body, and worry about fine tuning down the line, 3 to 6 months down the line.
Fantastic. So well said. Seriously, tips to live by. Definitely. Um, Start asking your questions, guys, in the live chat. So as always, we will have some time at the very end to answer member questions. Just start your question off with a capital Q so we could easily identify. So I've brought on the team here, Dr. Phil, Richelle. I'm going to start with you, Phil, if you have any follow-ups for Lee.
Yeah, Lee, I wanted to know, what age were you when your symptoms started, and what age were you when you had the colectomy?
Do you know, I always struggle to remember. I think it was around 21, around
Okay.
21 when it started, and I was basically 28 and a half when I lost my colon. So it was kind of a quick, I was diagnosed, it progressed, it got really bad, lost my colon. It seemed to happen almost overnight in some ways, but very unfortunate. I'm quite a rare case really, because I speak to people all the time that have Crohn's and colitis, and they don't usually have a stoma. They usually have at least a part of their colon. So to lose at sort of 28 odd years old, the whole thing is bit of a rare case, unfortunate, but there you go.
Yeah, it used to be the standard that when they took out the colon for ulcerative colitis, that you were left with a ileostomy. It's
Yeah,
only been recently that they've tried to create a kind of artificial
that's it. Yeah,
rectum.
yeah,
But it is very common that 18 to 21 is when this starts. So I
yeah.
wanted to go back to pre-21. Is there
Mhm.
anything that about your diet or your lifestyle in your teens that you'd like to warn people about?
Do you know, it's so interesting. I often compared myself to my dad. He would kind of eat food and pay for it, like an Indian takeaway or spicy food or too much fiber and this kind of stuff. And I felt invincible. I could get away with anything, right? But obviously, I wasn't getting away with stuff. I would have the hottest curries. I would have sort of all this cereal and not experience too much bloating or anything. I felt like I was quite lucky until I got my diagnosis, and then obviously everything changed. And so I didn't really have any signs up until I noticed blood on the tissue paper, the toilet paper. That was honestly the first thing. It was like, oh wow, okay, a bit of an indication there as to not being optimally healthy, not knowing what was going on. And so I didn't really have any obvious signs. The only thing I would say is that I was naturally quite neurotic as a child, and I have fluctuated in periods of mild depression, I would say, all my life, as far as I can remember, up and down, up and down, but nothing too intense. It was really just, this took me over the edge. It was like a threshold that I couldn't really go beyond, having this bag and trying to cope with living with it, accepting it. That kind of just took me beyond a level of depression I'd ever experienced before, and just really grateful to find this way of eating, really.
Okay. And were you essentially healthy up until the blood started?
I had acne. I've had pretty bad acne. You won't see it here, but I'm pretty marked up on my skin from acne. I had some acne develop later on in life on my back. When I went carnivore, all that just stopped. So yeah, that's obviously a sign, most likely of leaky gut. It was obvious really now to me that I was consuming too many plant compounds. That for me and my gut, it was poking holes in my intestine, and it offset this cascade of events that led to my IBD and it exacerbating to the point where I needed my colon removed. So
Well, I want to compliment you on all the people that you've gotten the message out to, because your videos have been very helpful in the community. And there's a lot of people that you wish you would have listened to before
oh
you
yeah.
made it to 28.
Mm.
It's kind of ironic, though, but you're such a blessing to the UC and IBS community. I just, the IBD community, I mean, and I just appreciate you putting yourself out there and talking about difficult topics and helping people the way you do.
You're very
Yes,
kind. Appreciate it. Thank you.
ditto. I'd love to put this one up. It's a fantastic question from Dr. Cami. Do you think losing your colon caused or worsened your depression? Or do you think that the loss of the colon and therefore complete change in microbiome changed the depression?
Yeah, I have thought about this, but to me, it was just, I didn't feel massively different. The moment it came out, if anything, I kind of felt like I was cured. I didn't feel poisoned anymore in the hospital. So that was the first thing I noticed. But it was really just in the silence of being home alone and in my thoughts and just looking at my reflection, not getting the sleep that I thought I would get, my outlook, just everything changed. And so I have thought about this, but at the same time, when I changed my diet, I wasn't depressed anymore, yet the outcome of the surgery remained the same. And so, and I had experienced depression, not to the same degree, but definitely depression nonetheless with my gut, and even early in life when it probably wasn't too problematic. And so I think the theme here is just diet all the way. I think that for me, I probably do go in and out of ketosis, nutritional ketosis, that is, via a big load of protein in one hit, but it probably doesn't last very long. And it's just this natural way of going in and out of nutritional ketosis. If I eat carbohydrates, I mean, I've had too much milk on a carnivore diet and I've got moody. I feel moody. I can't control the way I feel as well. I'm just not in control. Where when I eat right, as long as I eat fatty red meat or I fast, I'm great. I'm in control, and I like things look better to me. Life is manageable, and so I think that's a very good question. But I think it is all about diet for me, at least in my situation.
Fantastic. How about this one? So GH has a friend, and so GH says, I love your story, Lee, and I've shared it with others. My friend is vegan and having heart palpitations, low energy, feeling anxiety massively. Is there anything that you would like to speak to maybe vegans watching this video?
I understand why people go vegan. I think in many ways, if you think long and hard about your health and diet and everything that pertains to diet, the lifestyle, your potentially your carbon footprint, animal cruelty, I think that a lot of people could go carnivore for the reason why people go vegan. It's just hard to explain because I understand it looks like we're direct killers of animals, and so we're killing more, right? But it's like, well, you're indirectly killing more. As far as I understand, vegan diets kill more animals than I kill. I eat nose to tail, local grass-fed ruminant meat. I'm not just eating kind of like one cut of meat every single day, and so I'm not traveling far. It's ethical in that it's local. It's grown near me. They eat grass. They're not eating grains that come from monocrops. They're not having antibiotics because they're not in CAFOs. I think it's a beautiful way of life because I think it's just mimicking nature. I'm mimicking nature. The cows are mimicking nature. The way that it's sustainable, it's on nature's terms. Where I think monocropping is kind of like, let's figure out how to feed a lot of people. All these pests are getting in the way. Let's kill these and kill them. And you've wiped out an ecosystem and killed everything down to the enzymes and organisms in the soil anyway. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's very difficult to explain. Another thing is as well, I mean, I understand that you might be able to sustain veganism for a level of time. It may be 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. But I do believe you're going to hit the wall at some point. And I think at that point, often the potential brain shrinkage or function comes into play, and then you can't be rational with how you see things, how you view things, which is unfortunate. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. But unfortunately, life thrives on death. Life is death. Life has the name life, but in reality is death. And that's nature's terms. You have to live life on life's terms. You can't live life on your own terms. And it's just about accepting these things. And I don't want people to go vegan and get sick and wait too long, and figure it out. Okay, actually, I need some animal nutrition. I'm pro-human. I do make these videos about vegans, and they're often quite entertaining. I don't take myself and everything too seriously all the time, but I am addressing the influencers and the activists who I believe are spreading a dangerous narrative.
Yes.
Nothing against why they believe that potentially they're spreading truth. They may really believe in their cause, but I think that can be harmful. And I do believe that a lot of these people become misanthropes because they kind of hold humans responsible for everything, which I understand. Technically, we have caused a lot of problems because just our nature, it's in our nature, we are this way. But I think that it's very, very tricky to try and convince somebody, changing your religion, your ideology, your diet. It's so tricky. It's all about education. It's just education. Approach it in a very human way, a patient way, but be very understanding and just potentially direct that person as best as you can. It's all about truth and accuracy.
Yeah, love that. I mean, I fell for it. I was vegan for 6 years myself. And I think what shook me out of it and really woke me up was I also became desperate to just feel better. I got so sick, lost my period. My skin wasn't getting any better. And so I began my search for solutions and answers. Would love your thoughts on this, Phil. For vegans watching and they are kind of curious about eating meat again, how would you combat that guilt, that shame that they tend to feel thinking about eating meat again?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bella. I think people need to understand that um, we are designed to eat certain foods, and we do not have the ability to properly digest cellulose and plant material. And that's why there's so many micronutrient deficiencies that occur in vegans, because you have to really pay attention to all these supplements and things because you're not naturally getting them in your diet. And those are insults to your body when you run these nutrient deficiencies. And you don't know they're there until they're there. And like Lee, he was in perfectly good health. And then all of this snuck up to him because of the whole autoimmune response, which is the body saying, there's foreign substances in me, I'm going to create antibodies against it. And then your own tissues begin to get harmed and damaged and killed by your own body trying to kill something that you're not designed to be eating. And some of that is the pesticides and some of that is other chemicals, but it doesn't make sense to eat a nutrient depleted substance for long periods of time because you're not going to get optimal health. And most vegans know about B12 deficiency and things like that, but it is, you really need amino acids and you need fat. You don't need carbohydrates to survive. Your body was designed that you have essential fats, that you have essential proteins called essential amino acids, and there are no essential carbohydrates.
Mhm.
So you need to eat foods that are rich in amino acids and fatty acids. And
That's right.
animal protein gives that to you just naturally. And your body just handles it better.
Exactly. Yep. Good luck for your friend. Keep us posted, please. Okay, so let me just say a couple thank yous. So lots of big fans of you, Lee here. Caleb says, hi, Lee, I'm a big fan. Bruce here says, fellow osteomate here, who also lost my colon due to UC. Keep up the good work. Thank you for having Lee on. Yay.
Sure, man.
Lee, do you
So,
have a, yeah, I was just going to
yeah, I have
ask
a
if
quick
Lee has,
question for Lee,
go ahead, go ahead,
if you don't mind, Bella.
please.
You have probably influenced hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have been recently diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease and probably advised them and got some of them on carnivore.
Mm.
What's been the natural course of the people who have had early diagnoses, not gone all the way to what you and the gentleman that just commented have and end up losing your colon?
Yeah.
How fast have you seen healing and how often have you seen healing in the community that is now drawn to you for advice?
Yeah. So long term, we see nothing but good results. In the initial stages, that isn't always the case because, again, it depends what condition are you in, what state are you in. Sometimes, so for example, if you're flaring up, it may be that you want to fast as a as the first move to make. Sorry, I've just banged the microphone there. You might want to fast in terms of like intervening on yourself sometimes. Just give the body a rest, give your gut a rest, and then slowly introduce sort of animal nutrition. But if you're flaring up and it's really, really bad, you could go on a lion diet overnight. That's not just going to resolve the problem, you know. And so it's a combination of just having patience, having some faith in the process, and slowly but surely getting onto the right diet, reducing certainly things like gluten, fiber, obviously, because it doesn't break down, different plant proteins, so other lectins in plants, phytohemagglutinin and things like that. Dairy, believe it or not. So casein protein can be a real issue. And so if you look at Zofia Clement's work in Hungary with the Paleo Medicina, the ketogenic paleo diet, it seems that people that are having autoimmune conditions, they don't only want to rid the plants, but they want to come off of dairy because of the casein proteins. And so the first thing you want to do is try and seal the gut. And we do know that the best way, hands down, to seal the gut is a lion diet. 1 part fat, 2 parts protein visually on your plate. That's just the best way to go in terms of treating IBD. And I would argue that of all the conditions that can be turned around, IBD is probably one of the most successful in terms of putting a client, a patient, onto a carnivore diet and then waiting to see what the results are. They're usually miraculous. And so I have people almost weekly sending me emails or private messages about their son, their daughter, their uncle, their mum, all sorts of people, walks of life, all over the globe, that have stumbled across some kind of information, whether it be me or not. You know, they communicate with me like, oh, I've been carnivore for 3 years. I've been in remission. I don't take any medications. You know, I've got Crohn's. And it's like, but you wouldn't know it. And they're just telling me because obviously they see me and they've heard my story and they relate. But it does seem that absolutely, if you've got IBD, diverticulitis, anything like that, a gut issue, autoimmune conditions in general, they respond so well to a carnivore diet, specifically a dairy-free, high-fat lion diet.
I'm going to pass it off. Thank you, Phil. And thank you, Kat. Go ahead, Richelle. Any follow-ups for Lee?
Yeah, I was just curious. You mentioned that it took a few weeks to start to feel the effects of doing B, 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 and E. What were the biggest changes that you noticed converting to B, 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 and E? And for those who don't know, can you explain what B, 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 and E is?
Yeah. So it's beef, butter, bacon, and eggplant. No, I'm joking. Eggs. And so plenty of variety there. I thought, you know, I can work with that. Overnight, the very next day, I realized in the evening I didn't have acid reflux. And so I wasn't worried about it. It wasn't something that was really pressing, but it is a pain, you know, and I would get it more so in the evening. And it was a daily thing. I'd often taken over the counter things. So immediately I was like, oh, that's kind of strange, kind of convenient. Don't have acid reflux anymore. I haven't had any acid reflux for 2 years and 8 months. So that's pretty amazing. I think that's grains mostly. I realized a bit of a pattern with grains, but beer, but they're grains, mashed up grains, isn't it? I would say after that, it was my skin that turned around before I even felt like I had optimal energy. My energy still felt like it was suffering, but I do put that down to this quick switch, my body not being used to using fats. And, you know, it takes a few days to go from one, like say, for example, glycolysis to beta oxidation. It's going to take a few days. And just because now you're in that mode, it doesn't mean that you're fat adapted and that you're thriving. You know, I was in ketosis probably in about 3.5 days, but it wasn't like, oh, I feel great running on fats. It just takes some time. And so it took me 3 weeks to actually really feel like my energy was there. And I would argue that months down the line, it just got better and better, especially when I started to cut out breakfast and increase fat intake and things like that. I just felt like I could function even better. But I mean, for me, the most profound was the depression on day 21. That's what it was all about. And that's what I was hoping. And I was kind of pessimistic about it, thinking like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's never going to work for me. All these other people, you know, especially with my mindset at the time. But 3 weeks go by and I was just happy and I felt good and positive. So there's a number of benefits. I have to say the most surprising one was not sweating and burning in the sun. So, I mean, you can tell I live in the UK because look how pale I am. But I can just lay out there in the sun if I wanted to all day. I don't sweat. I don't burn. And I used to have to put sun cream on because I'm a window cleaner. I work outside. So even if it's summer, you know, summer here in the UK, you still get plenty of sunshine. If you're working like hours outside, you know, you're going to get burnt on your neck, your nose. And it wasn't happening to me. So that was something that really surprised me, the whole burning in the sun thing. It's just a very cool benefit. You know, I can just not worry about the sun being harmful.
Yeah, absolutely. All 4 of us, raise your hand if you burn less when you're in the sun, unprotected, no SPF. Yeah, all 4 of us. And then raise your hand if you notice less body odor. Yeah, so cool, right? Anyone watching this in the live stream as a playback commented as well. Have you noticed the same? What do you think is happening for all 4 of us here to, you know, experience these types of shifts? Is it because we're no longer eating fiber and plants?
I think plants increase photosensitivity, and I think everything in a plant serves the plant. Everything is designed a certain way, and you can't compare. You know, when people start comparing humans to rat studies, I mean, just forget about it. It's pointless. Even comparing ourselves to other primates, they got large cecums, they've got colons double the size. They're converting cellulose into short chain fatty acids and running on fats. You know, that's why we derive. That's why our bodies try and do that during this sort of partial fermentation process. But we want to be eating the fats. But I think the problem is the polyunsaturated fatty acids, you know, omega-3 to omega-6, say, out of whack. I have looked into it. I can't remember now exactly what it is, but you've got these cells under the skin, eicosanoids. I think that's probably to do with eicosapentaenoic acid, which is obviously abundant in animal nutrition. I think what we build our cells from what we eat, and I think it's just a more advantageous composition of the cells at the surface or just under the surface of the skin, their composition. I think that we are less photosensitive when we deprive ourselves from plant foods. I think it's just that simple. And people kind of make these jokes about sunburning and ice cream, but I think it's true. I think if the ice cream's got a load of seed oils in it, I think you're more likely to burn. I think it is mostly to do with seed oils. And the people that burn are having high levels of, say, canola or rapeseed is the equivalent over here in the UK. You know, cottonseed, safflower and sunflower, even olive oil. I'm not an advocate of olive oil. I understand that can be a bit controversial, but they're still unstable fats. They do oxidize. I don't think it's natural to consume any oil in any bottle. And I think it increases photosensitivity. So,
wow. So here in the States, we are seeing some popular restaurants, fast food chains switch their cooking oil from seed oils to animal fats. Are you seeing anything like that in the UK?
No, but it just makes me smile to hear that. I love that. That's amazing. It's like watching a child eat meat. I love watching a young kid or a baby eat meat. I'm just like, brightening up my day. No, but I've discovered a couple of places where we can go and eat. So that's quite nice. Like if we really want to go out and eat, they can accommodate. So most of the places around here, they use rapeseed oil. So that's canola oil over there. I think it's quite the most common. So over here, we typically have fish and chips, and it's very popular on the weekend. People will go and get fish and chips. They used to fry it all in tallow, and now they're frying it in rapeseed and canola. And so it's like an old-fashioned thing that you can't even find anymore. And same used to be true of McDonald's. They used to fry fries, which used to be like starch, salt, and tallow. Where these days there's like 50 other ingredients, and they're frying it in canola and rapeseed. So it's such a shame. But if I had a load of money, I would probably try and do something about it. I'd sort of open up my own restaurant or something and try and pave the way. But it is a shame to see how it's gone. And I think it's not going to change anytime soon in terms of like mainstream and the built up areas with all the restaurants, the popular restaurants. Unfortunately, they're not using animal fats.
Oh, that's too bad. Let me put up Dr. Cammie's. She has a follow-up, and she was the one asking about your depression. She wants to know, what about cheese? Did that affect the depression, bring it back, make it worse?
So cheese for me, I do okay on dairy. I even do okay on milk. It's a bit of a gamble for me because I have to moderate. Don't drink any more than 500 milliliters a day. And I know there's carbohydrate in there. It's probably not ideal, but cheese is fine for me. I don't know. I'm a big believer really in minimizing dairy consumption. I think if you have genes, like pastoral genes, then it may be a benefit for you to have some level of dairy. It just makes life better for those people. But have what you need, and don't eat the cheese first. Don't base your meals around dairy. Fill up on nutrient dense fatty red meat. I don't think you should overcook it. Salt to taste. And when you're feeling full, if you really must, enjoy some cheese as like a dessert, or even treat it as a condiment, like a bit of Parmesan when your steak's okay. But I do think that calcium depletes magnesium. That's often why people get cramps. I think it's probably not advantageous overall to put that out of whack. Once your electrolytes are out of whack, it's very difficult, to get them back. And if you're consuming lots of dairy, lots of eggs are quite high in dairy. I think it's like 25 milligrams per egg or something like that. So if you're having dairy and eggs, and you're having sort of electrolyte issues, sleep problems and things like that, maybe cut back on the eggs and the dairy. It's tricky, but I do think that the lion diet, at least like a lion-centric diet, and then just treat other things as a condiment, is the most advantageous way to go with things.
Let's keep going. So we're doing member questions in these last 20 minutes. U3BD says, what do you think of raw meat and organs? Surely it preserves nutrients and avoids heterocyclic amines. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Maybe Phil and Lee, if you can start first.
Yeah, I I believe that raw meat is superior. Like I say, I think it's a natural trend that we gravitate into that kind of eating, and it's not necessarily the way we just go straight into it. It's taken me a long time to eat the way I eat now, and I do eat raw products every now and again. I have some raw egg yolks. I do have raw meat. I eat raw almost everything, but I just enjoy to have my steaks rare. I don't know about heterocyclic amines. I don't think there's any real solid evidence to show that they are carcinogens. I just don't think it's realistic to believe that cooking our meat is causing these compounds to cause cancer. You know, we've been cooking meat for hundreds of thousands of years. I don't know. At the same time, I don't believe in burning my food. So I keep my steak moving and I put it on high heat, but I keep it moving so it doesn't blacken anywhere. I flip it. I might flip it back again and go, right, that's it, I'm done. I definitely thrive when the fat isn't cooked all the way through. If there's raw fat in my steak, so say it's like that, I like there to be like that much raw fat in the middle. And I don't mind if it's room temperature. It doesn't stick in your mouth like if you eat it just completely raw. As long as you add some heat and it starts to render on the outsides, but it's raw in the middle, that's how I thrive. I can eat a lot of fat. I feel mentally better, the way I think and articulate things. It just seems to have an effect on my cognition. And again, you know, you think about it, we are getting more taurine, we are getting more B vitamins and vitamin C. So that's in terms of organs, I had organs in the beginning of my journey, but I never really enjoyed them, honestly. I have enjoyed heart. I have enjoyed brain, believe it or not. Kidneys, okay. I'm not a fan of cooked kidney or liver. I prefer them both raw. But saying that, I haven't had any organs probably for about 2-3 months now. And I don't really care for any organs. I don't crave them. I don't believe I require any organ meats. I'm probably getting sufficient nutrition, eating sort of fatty red meat, not cooked all the way through. Beef mostly, but sometimes lamb.
Awesome. Phil, any thoughts on this one? Phil, you're muted. Let me see if I can help you unmute.
I just think that we should eat what we're drawn to. And I think the body is amazing. I've noticed that I'm about 600 days carnivore at this point, and I notice the longer I'm carnivore, the rawer I want my meat. I'm not eating any raw meat at this point. I have in the past, but I just think our bodies to kind of tell us when to do things. And if we're paying attention, our body can probably guide us best on what to do.
Love it. So we've got Sabrina's question here. Thank you, Sabrina. She says, I'm carnivore-ish since January 2021. My triglycerides, cholesterol, HDL, she has listed her numbers. Concerns, advice, words of encouragement. So I'm guessing she is assuming that her numbers don't look great. Lee, what are your initial thoughts on her numbers right there?
I don't usually look at numbers too much. I'm often in a room with people like Coach Stephen, who's a phlebotomist. He's trained. I also don't want to sort of give any medical advice, but what I would say is that your cholesterol is absolutely controlled by your genes. You can't control what it's like saying, you know, look at my biome. Is that okay? It's like, it's perfect given the environment you're in and the materials you're ingesting. It's absolutely perfect. So given what you're eating and the context where you're coming from, that's exactly where it should be. They're controlled by your genes. And so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Obviously, if you wanted to raise, like, if you're actually concerned about something in particular, I'd have to know what you were eating to give you any kind of real advice or feedback. There's just not enough there, really. But I wouldn't worry about it. How do you feel? How do you present? You feel good? You got energy? You sleeping okay? How's your libido? All of that stuff is what is more important, in my opinion. Totally
agree. Phil, what do you think?
Well, I'm always jealous of the ladies who have HDL cholesterols in the 97 to 100 range. And ever since I was in practice back in the late 80s and 90s, I used to tell people that they have the Methuselah gene because I watched people go the way of their 80s and 90s, and the ones who had HDL cholesterols in the 90s and 100s, they were my 80-year-olds and my 90-year-olds. And it's just very, very protective of your blood vessels. And we got, in the 90s, they introduced these statin drugs, and all of a sudden, statins work by reducing LDL cholesterol. So there was all this focus on, well, we should be reducing LDL cholesterol because we have a drug now that can do it. But metabolically, what you're looking for is a HDL to be high and your triglycerides to be low. And at 53, your triglycerides are great. So you're metabolically really healthy. Your LDL's up as a result that you're transporting a lot of fat around your vasculature because that's what you're living on now. And you're much healthier living on ketones and having a high LDL than you are living on glucose and have an increasing insulin level. And you just don't have insulin resistance when you have triglycerides that low and HDL cholesterol's that high. So congratulations, Sabrina. Live long and prosper.
Exactly.
It's criminal to think like if your HDL's up, your triglycerides are down, you feel great, all your ailments are gone, you're not on any medication, but your LDL, you've got a problem.
Right.
It's like, I don't think so. I think that's probably correct, just like everything else is. It's nothing to worry about.
Yeah. From the thousands of cholesterol numbers that we've seen on these live streams, Sabrina, yours is so good. It's fantastic because your triglycerides are so low. HDL over 90 is amazing. I'm at 98, 6 years into carnivore. You should be proud. Okay. So keep us posted on how you feel. All right. Let's keep going. This is Michelle. Crohn's diagnosis 8 years ago, carnivore for 6 months. Is it normal to feel flares, pain at times? I'm still taking medication and I desperately want to get off of it. Is this goal achievable, Lee?
I believe it is. It's going to take time. I would highly recommend fasting. I don't know if you've done any fasting. I would just prepare and fast. Start practicing if you haven't already. Just give the gut a bit of a rest. Sometimes that's what it takes. Otherwise, if you're eating dairy, cut out the dairy. You don't want the dairy. If you want, you've got to seal your gut. So no plants, no teas, coffees, no dairy. I would preference eating once a day. If you have to, eat twice and load up on one meal, one time, high fat, load up on electrolytes, and then fast like there's no tomorrow. Just give it a go. See how you feel. You can do sort of water only fasting. I actually find dry fast a lot easier. If I wake up and drink some water, I'm going to feel hungry a little bit later. And if when I drink, I almost feel more thirsty throughout the day because I started drinking. But if I just wake up after a big meal the previous day, like say 6 p.m., now I've woke up and the next day, just don't drink, don't eat. After about an hour of just being awake, I'm just ready to go out into the world and I've got all the energy in the world. I think at least you'll give your gut a much needed rest perhaps. And another thing is just perhaps look into a high fat lion diet. So visually on your plate, 1 part fat, 2 parts protein. You can to compensate for the lack of muscle meat and nutrition you'd find in the muscle meat because it's quite low, potentially you have some organ meats in there as well. So high fat, maybe 1 part lean muscle protein and then the other part organ meats every few days or so, like a vitamin pill, and then fast. And I think you'll be okay. Most likely, just make sure you're talking to your doctor about your medication so that they can track that and see whether it's actually problematic you still being on the medication.
Amazing. This is from Caleb. What are your thoughts on people like Ben Bickman saying you can take a pill and get into ketosis in an hour? Lee?
Just pointless. What we're trying to achieve. But why? What's the need for that? I love Ben Bickman. I think he's great. He's way smarter than I am. So I just think, what's the point? What's the rush? Your body will go out of nutritional ketosis naturally with your diet and lifestyle. I don't think we need to be taking any pills whatsoever, really, unless there's an absolute requirement for something for whatever reason.
Awesome. Mia, why do you think the depression went away on day 21?
I'm not sure, but I spoke to Tammy Peterson a little while ago, and she'd noticed a lot of things after 21 days. If she fell off the wagon, or Michaela Peterson fell off the wagon, or she tried an experiment, it would take about 21 days for her to feel right again. So I did make a funny video about what's up with day 21, a bit of a mystery, but I'm not sure. I think everything just aligned that day. And so for whatever reason, my body was kind of like, it's found its rhythm, the beginning of its rhythm, perhaps on day 21. I was struggling with my energy in the first 2 weeks, and it started to turn around a little bit, but it was day 21. That's when it happened. So I think maybe that's when I became fat adapted, who knows?
Oh, possible. Day 21. GH, I'm struggling finding raw, unpasteurized milk in the UK at the moment. Anywhere or anyone in the Southeast have any currently opened and serving raw milk farms? Do you have any sources?
Yes. So Southeast, we've got, I know there's Ridley's Farm. That's up the hill, some like towards West Kingsdown. And you have Edgar and Sons. I think it's called Park Farm, Edgar and Sons it's in Braisted, near Westerham in Kent. They have a vending machine. So you just rock up there whenever you want and you just put your coins in or tap your card. You can take your own bottles down there. They sell glass bottles as well, and you can fill up all the raw milk you want.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever tried making raw yogurt, raw kefir with the raw milk?
Do you know, I've made is a couple of times the ice cream and sort of like, and just creamy milkshakes and things like that.
Nice.
Nothing plant related. I had some Keto Pro cherry berry electrolytes, and so you've got like a little bit of stevia and it's a bit naughty really. It's dangerous. It's a slippery road. I wouldn't recommend it if you can't moderate. But one time I went down there, they had a problem with the organisms through testing and things like that. So they had all these large containers out the back. And so we weren't allowed to use the machine. And he said, "Do you want some though, around the back? I can get you some." So he tipped like this big canister in, and where all the cream went to the top, I just had like this beautiful load of raw cream. Oh, it was amazing.
Oh,
incredible. Yeah, it was gold.
So good. Lucky you. Yeah. What are the benefits of carnivore over keto?
I think just for sensitive people that can't tolerate any plant materials, say, for example, you've got autoimmunity, you want to get rid of all those plant proteins, you want to get rid of potentially the oxidized fatty acids from seed oils or even the teas and the coffees. You know, for some people, coffee is a stimulant, it's a diuretic, it's got a neurotoxin called acrylamide. It just affects some people in different ways, their electrolyte balance, their sleep. So keto can be very different from carnivore, in fact. You know, if you think about it, carnivore, you could just eat or drink nothing but milk. That's a carnivore diet. But it's really not a good way to go, you know. So, and you can be plant-based keto. So there is no such thing as the carnivore diet or the keto diet. So when you hear that, oh, you know, how to make the keto diet healthy and all this kind of stuff, it's like, well, what kind of keto diet? What fats are we using? You know, what plants, etc. So I think if you do well on a keto diet, I still would approach it sort of prioritizing fatty red meat. Be meat centric.
Exactly.
And then it's up to you. You know, if you can tolerate other things, I wouldn't say tolerate is a bad word. We shouldn't be tolerating anything. If you can live a very healthy lifestyle by eating some nuts, some seeds, some berries, whatever it is that you enjoy, more power to you, I guess. But just, make sensible decisions. Meat centric.
Absolutely. Now, Richelle, you also had a lot of experience with keto. What benefit did you get from carnivore that you didn't get from keto?
Ooh, I was just going to type it in the chat. For me, it cut out the noise. So I found with keto, it was just an excuse for me to just consistently binge eat on keto-friendly treats that were infused with stevia and erythritol and all the sugar alcohols and everything. And it just kept all of my cravings alive. I would say it just simplified things for me. It just cut out the noise. It made it so that those, alarm bells, as I call them, or, the voices of, oh, you need to eat this, you need to eat, just everything just got really quiet. And it was just so much easier for me to just scramble some eggs and cook some bacon, because those are the things that I like to binge eat on. But I was told, oh, you shouldn't eat those and, eat them in moderation. What the hell's moderation? I don't know. Now having permission to eat that way, I just feel significantly better. And again, I agree with what Lee is saying, especially for people who are sensitive to things. I didn't know how sensitive I was to certain things. I'll use carrots as an example. We had a Friendsgiving a couple years ago, and there were 2 little pieces of carrot on my plate. And within 2 hours, my whole system emptied along with the carrots, just like Lee's talking about. The fibrous stuff comes out the same. And I was like, wow, those 2 little carrots just totally fried my system. And it took me a few weeks to kind of get back into a normal rhythm again. So for me, carnivore just makes sense. It just makes sense to me.
Totally. Pantelos wants to know, in my country, it's very difficult to find fatty beef or lamb parts, mostly lean parts. There's only pork and chicken. What can I do to keep up with my 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio? And I'm not a huge fan of pork.
Okay. Whether you can access a local butcher or not, I'm not sure, but bone marrow is often overlooked. I think bone marrow is underrated.
So
We
good.
often hear, add butter, add
Yeah.
egg yolks, fat trimmings is another thing. If you can speak to your local butcher, you can get lots of very, very cheap, if not free, fat trimmings. I get a lot of free lamb fat from some butchers. Funny thing is sometimes if I'm getting a steak and you see, they're carving up your steak or whatever, I often get it out of a dry ager. So I say, keep the suet on, keep the tail on. It's all there intact. Where often if you go into the butcher, sometimes the stuff just at the front that's already cut, they don't leave that on. They've kind of through supply and demand, and this fearmongery that's often present with the saturated fats and things like that. It's like learnt behavior. Butchers now are just cutting off the fat and often throwing it away. And so fat trimmings and bone marrow. Ask about marrow bones. Other than that, butter's great, butyrate and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, don't worry about it. Egg yolks is another thing.
Yes. Great. How many days do you fast for, please? Thank you.
So fasting I use as a tool. I wouldn't just fast. If you're fine and dandy, everything's ticking over, and I don't think there's any need to fast. But I think if you're, say you're flaring up, or say that you fell off the wagon, or you want to reset, I think just a 1 day dry fast is great. You don't need to do anything more than that, I don't believe, unless you've got some kind of desperate type of healing that you want to address. Say, for example, you are on a carnivore diet, you've got IBD, and then all of a sudden you flare out of nowhere. Maybe just, electrolytes in your water, salt in your water, and then just do a water only fast for a few days. I've only done a 5-day water fast and a 4-day dry fast, but I found the 4-day dry fast easier than 5 days with water and electrolytes. Can you believe? So I just find it super convenient. A couple of days is great, I think.
Amazing. And then, Lee, do you have experience with the medication mesoline for UC? This person is asking if he or she should take it or not.
I have not got any experience with that. I assume it's probably some kind of steroid. Look, all these allopathic medicines, they are not ever going to address root cause. You're never going to get better. That's the thing, and there is a need for them sometimes. It's like plants; they can confer a benefit, but it's in the short term. It's like they're all medications. Plants, all these toxins, medications. It should be used temporarily. A means to an end. It's not like we should be going on some kind of potent drug for UC, and then when that stops working or doesn't work, they try another drug or up the dose. So that can be very egregious on the system, and it's just not sustainable. And so I don't know about this particular drug. Feel free to look into it. You guarantee there's lots of side effects like there is with all medication. But just do your due diligence, and potentially, fast, tweak your diet a little bit and see whether you need it.
Yep. Phil, any idea what this is?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard medicine that we use to treat UC, and it's one of those that is totally appropriate to use as a bridge as your body's healing. And it's good to have bridge medicines that you can take intermittently if you do have flares while you're healing. And people should give themselves, 6 months to 12 months to really get healed up. And I don't think they should feel guilty if they need to do some traditional medicines as a bridge while they're healing their body and trying to keep their symptoms under control. But it's great to get off these drugs long term, because we'd rather have a healthy GI tract than an unhealthy GI tract maintained by medications.
Fantastic. I want to wrap up with firstly thanking you, Lee, for your time, and also to give you an opportunity to share where people can work with you. Do you do coaching? Do you have communities to help people?
I haven't really got anything like that going at the moment. I'm exclusively on YouTube. So find me at Kent Carnivore on YouTube.
Awesome.
Enjoy the videos. Feel free to reach out. I try and respond to comments and email. It's tricky, they come in quite a bit. So yeah, I do my best, but I haven't got any kind of services as such. I should probably look into getting qualified to do consultancies, at least with gut health and things like that. I often do sort of these free calls behind the scenes, but yeah, I'm on YouTube.
YouTube, linked down below, right in the description box, guys. Just expand it if you don't see the clickable link. Highly recommend you guys just take a second from here. If you're already here, click it and go subscribe. Thank you so much, Lee.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect.